So this is, I'm going to introduce you to Stephen, who is well, actually, why don't you tell us what you do?
I will do that. I will do that.
You'll do that.
I promise.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Good. So I won't do anything. I won't tell anything then. I won't say anything about you. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, okay.
And to introduce yourself and take it. I'm gonna disappear off for a few minutes because I need to be in another session.
It's really not going to be that bad.
Excellent. Good. Okay. So lovely. Good. Amazing. Okay. Cool. Okay. So
yeah,
I'll leave it with you then.
So slide start. Yeah.
1 second. I'll just get the slides up.
Great stuff.
And wait a minute. We're nearly there. I think we're good.
We're there.
So can everyone see that? Okay. Have we got screen? The screen good. We've got a thumbs up.
Thanks, Kata. That's helpful. You keep doing thumbs up all the way through for me, Kata, please.
Yeah,
bit of support. So if we were outside Summerhill School today, this is practically what we'd see. Wouldn't be the car there, but there would be the house there, there would be the children there, and it wouldn't look particularly different from what you're seeing there. This slide set grew out of our festival day that we had last term. And it was running in my classroom in the history room for members of the community. And we just want to spend a little bit of time this afternoon sharing it with you. Hopefully there'll be bits in here that you feel attract you and will make you want to find out a little bit more about the wonderful Summerhill and a lot about its founder, S Neill. So hold tight. We call this in education often the PAD spot. The post-alcoholic depression spot, straight after lunch. Everybody's had too much to eat and they start to nod. Well, hopefully this afternoon, you're not going to nod. Just keep looking at the screen and I'll keep talking to you and hopefully guide you through a little bit about the biography of S Neill, the life of S Neill. So what have we got there? We've got that lovely symbol that reminds us that we're talking about 100 years. No longer an experiment, we say, yeah. Many a teacher has said to me, we can't do what Summerhill does, but the mere fact that it lives and works is an inspiration to us who are under a rigid system. When the pioneer school dies, where will the stimulus come from? I think it's a really exciting bit of phrasing there, just to remind us of the importance of Summerhill's significance, not only locally in Leiston or nationally in Great Britain, but across the world, that international bit that says many teachers, not just in this place, but across the world, look to Summerhill and say, I'd love to be able to do that in my own place. I'd love to pick elements of that to my own school, to my own setting, to my own surrounding. And the fact that Summerhill continues is the bit that keeps people on board. I may not be able to do everything, but there are elements of the practice that I can take back to my own place, to my own setting. And long may that continue and that fire keep burning. So what gives me the credibility to sit here and talk about Summerhill? Well, I've been with Summerhill, as it says on my little piece of paper there, the thing that I applied for, a job in 2010. Yeah, I'd been in education for many years in a formal setting, in a school setting out in the big world. And then there was this little advert that my wife pointed out, it said, adventurous history teacher, it said. And she said, that sounds like you. Yeah. 11 years on, and hopefully I'm still being fairly adventurous, but it's a fantastic place to work. And there's lots of resonances in what I did before I came here. You know, we deal with the same things at Summerhill, but we deal with them in a very different way because we have more time, because we have more space, because we have more of a feel of community. Things happen in a greater way. There's a nice little quote there, and I'll look for my sheet because I think people are over my words there. The bit that really struck me when I started to understand a little bit more about Neill, it says, the art of dealing with children might be defined as knowing what not to say. Yeah, education is full of words, and dealing with children is often full of words. And the bit that really resonates with me is that feeling of sometimes we have to learn, or most of the time we have to learn, not to say anything at all, to look, to observe, to be interested, and to sit back and see what happens. So what have I been doing? So I've been collecting and collating, as it says there. I'm not the creator, I'm not the book writer. I'm the what's known now as archivist. I think it's got something to do with my age. I think, possibly. But no, my job is to collate what's around. And there's a terrific amount of information in the school and around the world. Enough there for us to write many, many books. But I don't see that as my job. My job is to collate this, to put it together, to make something whole. One of the challenges we set up when we talked about freedom to learn and the festival before was to begin doing these things with hundreds. And my challenge continues. Yes, 100 quotes. Yes, 100 photographs. And some of these photographs that we've managed to collect together now go right back to the beginning of the school's history, right back to 1934, some of the photographs I've got now. And then for the lovely Zoe, who I think is also watching this afternoon, to look at those quotes, look at those photographs and add her contribution, add her reflection to that. So that's my credibility for being here this afternoon, being part of the staff, but also the collator of some of this history about the school. Neil's own words. Summerhill stands as an example of what a school can be and will be in the future. Anyone who has seen it would tell you that it is the least neurotic place in England and possibly the most sincere place in the world. And those who have got close associations with the school, I'm sure will agree with that statement. It's a pretty wonderful place, a pretty privileged place to not only be associated with, but also to work in. I think I'm doing the sales kick well this afternoon, but this is sincerity. It's a special place. So there's the man himself in all his glory. Yeah, the founder. And what we mustn't forget is that when we look at his dates, we're talking 1883. Yeah, this man is a Victorian, isn't he? Yeah, it goes back to the Victorian age. Yet his thoughts, his feelings, his emotions are of a generation way ahead of his time. A little bit about the family there. We read about Neil's parents in his biography, Neil Orange Peel. And he tells us she was a proud wee woman. I wish I had the Scots dialect to do this. Yeah, I'm afraid you've got to deal with a little bit of Essex Suffolk here. She was a proud wee woman. She was a snob and she made us snobs. How honest is that? Talking about your mother. How brave is that to say that about your mother? But what we do find in Neil's writings is that lovely honesty about his relationships with people and at times his apologies as well. We look a little bit about his father. In that first part of the book, he's talking about how his father, was cruel to me. He said, he was a dominant, he was a dominating teacher. Yet later in his life, the relationship with his father was a much more sincere, much more sensitive relationship. So Neil is brought up in Scotland, just outside a place called Forfar, and he's in his father's school. How wonderful to be a pupil in your parents' school. You can imagine it, can't you? Yeah, so it works for some, but not for everyone. Yeah. And Neil eventually becomes a student teacher to his father. And the relationship, is a bit rocky. It's not the best of relationships. And at times, Neil begins to question, what is this system about? Look at the way we treat our children here, way ahead of his time. And eventually he does go on to study. He doesn't regard himself as a great academic. His father hasn't regarded him as a great academic. He's going to go out into trade. He spends a bit of time out as an apprentice, but eventually gets to university. And he gets a teaching job. Look at that smart collar, yeah? It'd be nice to put speech bubbles, wouldn't it, above some of those people's heads, yeah? What are they thinking, eh? It's the historian in me coming out here, yeah. What if, yeah. Just love it, don't we? We ought to pose for that. And then we hit the big time, yeah. Neill uses his experiences. You know, he talks in that first book about the dominie, the teacher, the dominie, the Scots word for teacher, has to keep a daily log. You know, I've been in that position before as a head teacher where, you know, you keep your logbook and you're writing in there, even today, looking at our logbooks, you know, fire drill, somebody came to visit, you know, nothing particularly exciting. It's just about keeping a diary, really, an extended diary. But in that book of Neill's, you know, he starts doing this, you know, but what should we be thinking about when we're talking about our scores? Yeah, that reflective model that goes all the way through his writing, challenging himself and others to think about children and childhood in very different ways to the systems that were certainly in Scotland at that time. And he does his bit for his country. Yeah, he eventually joins the war effort. And as it says there, you know, it's not a case of he goes into active warfare. He does lots and lots of training. His mental state is quite frail at times there. But it's inside this man, there's, you know, lots of creativity that wants to be expressed. You know, he's got the gift of the writer, but he's also got that wonderful practical gift of the artist, the creator, the maker. When we look through Neill's books and he talks about how he spends his time in and around the children, he's there crafting and creating. So wonderful, wonderful photographs we've got. And there's one particular one I love where he's got a bedstead, the bottom half of a bed, a metal bed, and he's spending his time putting the springs back onto the bed so it lasts another term. Yeah, but very, very practical, as well as having that intellect of vision and reflection. So Neill is frustrated. He doesn't know what to do in terms of the system he's in. He's 30 by the time he leaves Scotland and comes down into England. He spends time in London, in Hampstead. Without making it too much of a plug, on Monday and Tuesday, I'll be doing some presentations about Neill's books and a little bit more about what he's writing and where he's writing and who inspired him. So I won't take all that away now, but he tries creating that idea of let's have a school in England which reflects my values, my beliefs, but ends up traveling abroad into Europe. He spends time in Germany, he spends time in Austria. And when we date back, where does Summerhill come from? And then we look at that date, 1921, that's the date we relate to. Summerhill began during that time. That's the 1921 of the 100 years. So his experiences in Germany and in Austria, sadly, are not particularly successful. He finds the systems, although they seem to be very liberated, he finds his colleagues quite frustrating. It doesn't go far enough for him. And he comes back and he talks about setting up a new school. Yeah, one of his lovely quotes again, and you'll excuse me for reading it to you. That's a bit didactic, isn't it? It's not what I would do with my group of children. I wouldn't sit there and read what's on the screen, but you're a wide audience, so let's hear it. Interest is the only criterion, and interest is the word to use in connection with children and schools. The question is not what work shall a child do? The question is, what interest has he? What can he do with all his infinite life and energy? What channel will afford him most happiness? So now back in England, he's met the lady who's going to be his first wife, Lilian Neustadter, referred to as Mrs. Linns in lots of the writing. She's originally got Australian connections through her family. She has an elder sister who is a very proficient and famous writer, and the sister helps them to find this place in Lyme Regis in Dorset. And that's where we get the name from. You know, we say, you know, where is this Summerhill name origin? What is the origins of this Summerhill name? And that's this place here. The name of the house is Summerhill, which eventually Neil and Mrs. Lynns take with them to the new venue. When my first wife and I began school, we had one main idea: to make the school fit the child instead of making the child fit the school. How refreshing is that? So the great move to Leiston. And as the story goes, you know, Neil is looking for a property. He's looking for a property near the coast. He's looking for something quite expansive, but he's also looking for something relatively cheap. Yeah, they haven't got bags of money to spend on an enormous property. They need the size, but they haven't got the finances for it. But they eventually, I think it says in the book, you know, the last property they actually see, having been on their travels through East Anglia, is this wonderful old building. And, you know, I can wax lyrical on this one. Another slideshow sometime for some people. New Haven, built by the Garretts, yeah, the famous Garretts industrialists of Leiston, built this house as a family house. Before Neil arrives, it's been used as a school already, as a boarding school. So it's got some sort of history to it already, this place. It's been used for that purpose. But Neil arrives and, you know, he falls in love with this place. You know, there's a quote coming up a little bit later. It talks about his love for this space, for this building. And why is it such a good space? Well, the house, the property is good, but it's right next to the station. You know, those of us that have the privilege of living in glorious Leiston will know now, you know, that the railway still runs through the place, sadly not as a passenger line, but you can imagine, and Zoe will know this, you know, that experience of traveling from, possibly from London or the other side of the country, on the train. It arrives at Leiston, you jump off the train, run across the road, and you're in the school. Now, how amazing is that? How convenient is that? A little while ago, I managed, looking on the internet for resources I do from time to time, a lovely little volume of photographs, a little album dated 1938, full, richly full of somebody's photographs of life at Summerhill in the year 1938. How's that? So that's wow factor, that is. That's, you know, archiving at its best. And this is one of those photographs. I think I've said in the rubric, you know, there'll be photographs that haven't been out in the big world before. And this is one of them. And this is, as it says in my caption, a van that traveled around England at the time, explaining the situation in the Spanish Civil War, giving information about the politics of the time. And, you know, I'm sure found an amazingly warm welcome in liberal Summerhill, where people want to know truths, want to know about the experience of other people across the world, how children and adults are living across the world. But, you know, what a super shot, you know, what a wonderful historical piece of evidence there. And during the war, Leiston being on the Suffolk coast, available to bombing, near to Felixstowe, Yarmouth, other, you know, centres of trade with large shipping. Eventually, Neil has to give in and admit that the children, the school is vulnerable. And they uproot, and from the years 1940 to 45, leave sunny Suffolk and move to North Wales, to a place called Festiniog. And what is it like there? Well, you just need to read Neil's writing about this. Yeah, in Hearts and Heads, you know, there's lovely, lovely descriptions of how, you know, he's hating every moment of it. Yeah, it's a large rambling house. It's got lots of space. The people locally don't really like the score that much. They're not sure. I think the people are probably a bit dodgy there. They're not keen on their new clientele. They haven't got a terrific amount of food. They haven't got a terrific amount of money. It's quite a cold place, but it's home for those 5 years. And sadly, it's during that time that Mrs. Lynn's actually dies, and she's left in, the remains are left in Wales, so to speak. Neil moves on. So another quote. My screen's got little pictures across it, so I've got to go back to my paper. You'll excuse me. Ah, look at that. Well done, you. Annie's just done a bit of magic. Maybe the most joyous day of my life was the day I returned to Leiston in 1945. After the disastrous interlude in Wales. The school was in a bad way. The army had had it for 5 years and had done more damage in that time than my kids had done in 25 years. But it did not seem to matter. We were home to dear old Summerhill. Yeah, a great affection for the place, for this place, and for the people. I think, I'm sorry, won't mind saying, I think we've had conversations about, Neil and relationships with people locally. He's quite a celebrity. People know who he is. But there was one little bit I was reading the other day about his relationship with the local doctor, Dr. Nora Atchison, and how he really respects her and for what she does within the community. And we meet the second Mrs. Neil, Ina, Zoe's mum. And Ina had been working with Neil during the time in North Wales. She'd been acting as a carer towards Mrs. Lynn's, her son, Peter, who eventually works at the school as the potter. It's all part of that system. And Ina takes over eventually from Neil. And if you look at those dates there, Ina is in charge for a significantly long period of time. Yeah, there's 12 years worth of leadership there, following the example set by Neil. They'd worked as a double act, and certainly towards the end of Neil's life, Ina was the one with the energy to keep it going. So more about this man, and we're going to hear a little bit more if those people who choose to come on board on, I think it's Monday evening, we do it Monday and Tuesday evening. Often when we've had visitors here, people have said to me, yes, I've read Neil's book. Yeah, and you take a little swat and say, that's lovely, you've read his book, but you've got another 19 to go then. Yeah, there are 20 books there to be read. Yeah, we know, and we'll find out a little bit more about it when I talk a little bit more on Monday, but some of those books are later amended and compiled into the book that eventually becomes Summerhill. But it's fascinating to read the other books, and I promote it to you, and hopefully if we have a time together later in early next week, we'll be able to look at them in a little bit more detail. But there are 20 books there, and I commend you to look at those. Go onto the internet, they're getting more and more expensive. I bought my lot, so I'm not worried about the price anymore, but get onto the internet and buy them up. Show how important this man is. And as it says, the one that of all those books he writes about teaching and approaches to childhood, the one he really admires in his own writing is the work of fiction. It's Neil writing a storybook that he's told the story to his children over many years, and he puts those words into a book that's published. And only this morning, in my first lesson in the morning with a young lady I'm teaching IGCSE history to, we suddenly got into a conversation, and she said, yeah, Last Man Alive. She said, we still read that as a family every time we go on holiday. Translation in German. Yeah, but fascinating. This is 1938 book we're talking about, and here's this contemporary family using as a holiday experience. Lovely. And what are we famous for at Summerhill? For many, many things, but the one that, if you've not heard of much else, you may well have heard of the meeting. Yeah, the opportunity for the community to come together to discuss what's important, things are happening in the community, to make decisions about how the community is going to run. And the learning goes on outside and inside. Aren't we lucky to have such beautiful photographs, yeah, tracking this history of the school. And one of my colleagues a little while back tried to create a set of photographs that mirrored what was happening in those classrooms back in an outside environment back in the 30s and the 40s. to do a comparison, but yeah. So we hear the phrase Summerhillians, and we celebrate Summerhillians, people who have been through the system here. And that question, well, Summerhill is wonderful, but how do they survive when they leave Summerhill? I believe there's a talk about that. Some of our former students will tell you about how they survive. And the answer to that in short is they survive very well, thank you very much. They do very well, and many of them do great things within the world. But here's just 3 examples of former Summerhillians. The lovely Evelyn Williams, who becomes the most prolific and talented artist. Michael Bolton, ballet dancer. John Birmingham, don't tell me you've not heard of John Birmingham. Yeah, come away from the water, Shirley. Yeah, Mr. Gumpy's outing. 3, just an example of 3 of the great talents, creative talents that Summerhill has produced and have gone out into the world and done the most amazing things. There would be many more. In my 11 years here, I could put up another 11 screens, couldn't I, really? Zoe, you get a mention. Look at that. Hey, some lovely shots of Zoe, born 1946, it tells us. Is that possible? And a lovely one, a little bit more up to date. And, in Zoe's beautiful words, Zoe won't want me to tell this. She's probably shrinking away at the moment to see herself and the words on the screen, but an amazing gift with language and sensitive language. Summerhill, excuse the voice, Zoe should be reading this herself, shouldn't she? Summerhill is a real place, not a utopia. Living in a community of around 100 people is not always easy. Here's the realist. Everybody is learning about themselves, and on a bleak day, with the east wind blowing, things are sometimes not wonderful. But Summerhill in summertime is lush, green, and not unlike Never Never Land. It is more of a family than a school, full of companionship, laughter, and real feelings. For many Summerhill pupils, it becomes the most meaningful experience in their lives. There's a little flash of the history room in the background with a PG Tips tea, and all tea and fold as we are there, all tea and sympathy. And a little bit more from the man himself. Neil always suggested, and he makes it quite clear in the 1930s, I've got a lovely quote that says next to it 1940, but I can't find the quote in the book, so I wouldn't use it. But he says back in then, people who have their autobiographies eventually shared with other people regret doing it. He basically says, why would you want to put all that onto paper and show other people? But back in 1939, he does write the first part of his autobiography, and it stays under wraps through to 1970s when this is published, Nil Nil Orange Peel. I do not want to be remembered as a great educator, for I'm not. If I'm remembered at all, I hope it will be because I tried to break down the gulf between the young and the old, try to abolish fear in schools, try to persuade teachers to be honest with themselves. I want to be remembered as an ordinary guy who believed that hate never cured anything. That being on the side of the child, Homer Lane's phrase, and we're going to deal with Homer Lane next Tuesday evening, not in a big way, but certainly we're going to find out a little bit more about him, is the only way to produce happy schooling and a happy life later on. Rich words. And when people begin to reflect on Neil's work, and this is 1999, Neil dies back in the 70s, in 1999, almost the year 2000, as we know, many great educators have emerged over the past 1,000 years, but few have left a deeper imprint on British schooling than the 12 men and women profiled here, and Neill is listed in that top 12. People have had the most impact upon British schooling. And the book Neill is most famous for, the American version, and a copy of the British cover there as well. Still available if you go on the internet. I've got no shares. If you really want to get to know the man, I've given you a sort of a run through, a brief biography this afternoon, but there are two, I'm going to call them tomes because they are quite weighty, but two really interesting books that would give you all the background you really need about Neill. Lots and lots of details about, his life, but also certainly in the book on the right-hand side, an insight into people who Neill was corresponding with as well. So again, I commend those two books to you if you want to find out more about the man, both by Jonathan Kroll. The future of Summerhill itself may be of little import, but the Summerhill idea is of the greatest importance to humanity. New generations must be given the chance to grow in freedom. The bestowal of freedom is the bestowal of love, and only love can save the world. And here we are, the famous jigsaw, which we still hope might be available at some stage, but a lovely bit of craft, eh? Little gift for the 2000s. And that's really where we're going to leave it. So I don't know how much time I've used up, but hopefully, about half an hour of that. Yeah. If there are questions and answers, if anybody's still out there and wants to talk, then let's spend a little bit of time talking. Zoe, I can see you. I can't hear you. You're going to unmute and chat to me.
Yeah, I said, well done. That was very.
Oh, bless your heart.
I have to take you to task for calling for far.
A bit of English in me. Lovely to see you.
Nice to see you too. It's very well done. Very interesting.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. It can't be easy listening about your dad, can it really?
Well, it's very nice. I mean, obviously, I could add to everything you said. I could have had a bit,
Absolutely. You need to be on the other side of the sofa.
Yeah. But I would just talk too much.
We don't mind that. No. I'm just scanning the screen. Oh, is there a question? Goodness me. Are these books available online anywhere? Yeah, I believe they are. There was a bit of a difficulty over some of these publishing rights because the family own the rights to the books, but across the world there have been situations where books have been published, Zoe's nodding there, without permission.
Yeah.
In other situations, I know the lovely Michael Newman produced 100 copies of the Dominie's Log as a gift to the world in 2015. So yes, the books are certainly some of them are in the public domain.
I don't think they are yet. I would quickly say that all the funds from the books go to the S Neill Summerhill Trust. So, but when they're our own published books worldwide, but of course, if you buy them off the internet, then the old books that are not in print are nothing to do with us.
But yeah, get buying, I say, yeah. But, they're out there. They are out there. I mean, again, I'm keep plugging this bit about money, but on money, being the man with the collectors, I'm looking for a certain type of volume. I'm looking for copies where you've got dust wraps on. I've gone up a gear. I've got ones with plain boards. I want the pretty ones now to go make my setup. So yeah, they do exist, but to say they're available easily, no, they're not available easily. Places like Amazon and eBay, but they are available. But fortunately, because people keep buying, they're getting increasingly rare on the internet. So buy now, don't get upset and wait for it. I think. Oh golly, what's that? Hi, I'm in Utrecht in the Netherlands. I have been recently looking into a similar experiment.
Hello.
Yeah, interesting. Not to my knowledge. Yeah, not to my knowledge, Christine. Yeah, no, I've not come across the name yet. That doesn't say that doesn't. He's not there. I've gone through the books. I'd say as in I've gone through the books. I'm not saying as well as everybody else, and into articles going through to the 1980s, as in after Neil's passing as well. But I've never come across the name. But I'm interested. I'm going to make a little note of it certainly. And
yeah, the school still exists. The Werkplaats still exists here in the Netherlands, but it's now a mainstream regular school. I think since about the 1960s. But it came into existence very much the same way. But unfortunately, Kees Booker, he died of leukemia in the 1960s, and it didn't kind of faded in a way that Summerhill didn't, in a sense.
Right.
Yeah, but it was from a very similar philosophy. But I think Kees Booker was much more of a pacifist. He was also a troublemaker, and he got into a lot of trouble with the Dutch government. It was fascinating, but I tried to see if there was, because they would have been peers.
No, contemporaries,
yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I was interested if it'd come up at all. That was all really.
No, I'd be interested. I mean, is there a biography of this?
Yeah, there was some. I actually found some older radio archives and so on, interviews with him.
Okay.
And there are books and things. Yeah, but yeah, not. It would have been. I would have been so surprised if he hadn't have visited Summerhill, or that there had been some contact, because, again, it was very much to do with the democratic school movement. Also very much influenced by Dewey and people like that. And
really?
Maybe there is something, maybe there isn't. But
yeah, absolutely. No, but now you've pointed that out to me. I will certainly look.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we've got your address, your email address somewhere.
Yeah, I can find you. Yeah, if you're based at Summerhill, I can probably find you.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah. It's nice we've made a link anyway. That's what Summerhill was always about, making links with people. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay.
Good speaking with you. No, that's
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Pleasure. Oh, do you have a full your collection of these books? Yes, absolutely. We can do that. Yes. In fact, if you go onto I can do that personally for you, willingly and happily. But on the school website, I think you'll find there is a list on there. There's a couple of questions. I questioned a couple of the dates about publishing on there. I need to have a quick look at some stage, but there is a list of books on there. I think. Quick rubbish. Excuse me, just for a minute. Yeah, here we go. He holds it up to the screen. Not that anybody can see probably at that distance, but yes, it does exist. Yeah, a book list. People are just asking about book lists, Zoe, and I'm saying that there's one on the school site, isn't there? Yeah.
There should be one on the website there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It should be up to date.
Good to see you. God bless. And
thank you very much, Stephen.
You're welcome.
You. That was very, very informative.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.